Everyone, thanks for the warm welcome. My name's Carla Rylance. I'm the head of external production at Behaviour Interactive, and I'm also a member of the XDS Advisory Committee. And I'm excited to welcome you to this very important panel from a fantastic range of top-tier voices in external development. Thank you. The importance and the impact of consistent and quality support from external development managers is integral to the success of developer-provider relationships, and so, of course, to the quality of the video game itself. This panel was brought to life following an engaging on-stage service provider discussion at XDS Ignite in March of this year. Our lovely moderator, Tara, was passionate to continue the discussion on the main stage at XDS because what a better place to advance this discussion and the industry as a whole than in the open, collaborative, progressive space that is XDS. So without further ado, thank you all for coming. Enjoy the presentation and welcome Tara and co.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you, everybody, for coming to this topic. As Carla said, I'm pretty passionate about this. You know, I work in partnership with a lot of people in this room, and you know, you are the lifeblood, I think, of a lot of the relationships that exist within external development. And I feel like this is a conversation that we haven't really openly had around the role of an external development manager or management team and how important they are, and maybe how little we actually talk about how we set up those people or those teams for success as an industry. So I'd like to sort of introduce the panel here. So I'm Tara Phillips. I'm from Keywords. I work for the Create service line, which is art and game dev. We have 26 studios across the world that specifically offer art and game dev services. And so I see a lot of the trends across the industry and how we set up partnerships and things like that. And so this is kind of why I wanted to have this conversation. And here on the panel, maybe I'll just let you guys introduce yourselves. Maybe start with your name, where you're working right now, and sort of how you got to be where you are.
Sure. I'm Caroline Calloway, and I am on a central XDev team at Riot Games for about the last year and a half. Some of you may know me from my time at EA on a central XDev team as well. And how I got into XDev was pretty interesting. I was working on game teams, mobile game teams at EA, and I kind of went on a secondment to our Helsinki studio, and they were working on a Chinese SKU of SimCity Build It, which was kind of the main title that studio worked on. And they were working with a Chinese developer publisher, and the project was not going super well, mostly I think because of really big cultural differences and differences in the way that the different groups worked. So I just found that experience of managing the project between that Helsinki and Beijing team just very challenging in a good way, and I loved it so much that I was like, I want to be an XDev. So that was it.
Awesome.
Yeah, And I'm Christian Rasmussen from Westlab Studios. I'm the biz dev there, and we do concept design for games. I joined in 2020, worked in IT before that, and once I got the chance to jump ship and get into games, which was a lifelong dream, I just did it, and haven't looked back ever since.
Awesome.
Hello, Dana Smith. I'm from Bungie, and I'm the external development producer on Marathon. And I started out, seems like many moons ago, in QA, and worked my way up through QA and production. Started out at Sierra Online, and eventually ended up over at Surreal Software, and then WB Games and Monolith, and spent quite a few years there. And at Monolith, I spent quite a bit of time in production, working with concept and effects and lighting, basically the art pipeline. And we had quite a few external partners that we worked with, and I found I really enjoyed the go-between between the external and internal, and getting everybody to work together, and learning the fresh perspective from the external team, working on the internal side of things. And that combined with the other teams that I had been working with over the years, like legal and IT, and learning that all came together to create, working with external partners, and those were all areas that I really loved, and it clicked, and it made sense. And when I learned of a position opening up at Bungie, which I had always been excited about, and loved their games, and fast forward to now, and here I am with Bungie, and working exclusively on the XDev side of things, and spinning up the pipeline for the new Marathon game. So,
Woo!
it's me.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Kara Tunyan. I was one of the co-founders for Counterpunch Studios in 2011. I had been in games before, and my partner at the time and I had this brilliant idea to start our own studio. We thought we'd get through maybe one game, maybe 1 year. 10 years later, we were approached by Virtuous and decided to join their family. And so now I'm the general manager for the Los Angeles office of Virtuous, Counterpunch of Virtuous Studio. Through my time with Counterpunch, I've worked with many clients, a lot of partners, and I found that in the best situations in a production, the external service manager is our greatest ally, our champion, and often our lifeline. So I was extremely interested in this panel because this is what we do every day.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, that's a unplanned but fantastic segue to sort of the first main topic of conversation, which is just what makes a really good and successful XDev manager. Maybe if we can kind of run down the panel here in terms of like what is a trait or a way of being that really makes for a successful individual in this role.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of ways that I could answer that for sure, but I think I really think a passion for building relationships is really critical. Really seeing the value in building relationships. Being proactive and not just reactive when needs come down the pipeline. Like really trying to see ahead, build relationships that you can anticipate your needs with. And I think really kind of being a connector, like not being a barrier between like an external partner and a game team, but like really trying to make those connections really solid. And gosh, lots more to say, but I'll pass it on.
Sure.
Yeah, well, I see it as sort of the XDev manager as the sort of bridge between what we do as service providers and sort of the face towards us and the vision holder for whatever we're working on. And they have so much, responsibility towards us and towards the studio they're working for to make everything happen. And it's one of the most like central points for us as service providers to be able to have that person that we can go to with all the things we're working on and potential struggles we have. So, it's, as a service provider, it's one of the most important people you have within the whole engagement relationship you have with a the client.
Yeah, advocate and therapist.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think one of the most, speaking from the dev side of things, I think one of the most important things that I need to have when I go into a conversation with a vendor is a deep understanding of my project's needs and plans and pipeline, and speaking from the art side of things, how to explain, the tools that we use and what, the style that we're looking for, et cetera, and really understanding where we're going with things and applying that to, and sourcing the best, resources I can find to support those plans. And in the meantime, bringing it all together, introducing the internal to the external and having knowledge of how to get everybody onboarded and working together and successfully, executing the plans. Just a deep understanding of the pipeline in general.
Yeah.
For us, key characteristics of a successful partner in the XDev Manager is transparency, and also a commitment to creating a win-win situation where we can work together towards a common goal that is both beneficial and sustainable for both teams, so that it can be a continuous relationship. Also, organizational skills and the ability to document and maintain information so that if there is any changes, we can clearly speak about it rather than creating any kind of murky or situations where things aren't super clear.
Yeah, for sure. I think also, that person is pivotal in terms of understanding what's happening on both sides, not just operationally, but also like all of the dynamics of people on both sides, right? And you brought up a really good point about just differences in terms of culture as well. So if you're working with a totally different culture team, there's also, you become almost a translator, and I don't mean language translator, I mean like behavior translator and culture translator. And those are like skills that we typically don't really have as normal human beings in the workplace, right? Like, that's a thing that you have to be a specific kind of empathetic person to take the time to understand what's going on. So, in your opinion, what is the responsibility of an XDev manager? We have all of these capabilities, but what do you think is the most important sort of role of that person?
Should we go in the same order here?
Let's do this one in order, and then we'll switch it up from there.
Gosh, I think there's a lot of overlap, in terms of what makes a good XDev manager and the actual responsibilities that they hold. I think it's really about finding out what both parties need, and finding sometimes creative ways to meet both parties' wants and needs, like that, having a really mutually beneficial partnership. You mentioned a win-win, and that's really always what I'm striving for. Yeah,
I completely agree with you, Caroline. Like creating a win-win situation, and then as well as the communication. Like there's so much going on internally, and at the same time, there's also going a lot on the external side, and to sort of get that communication flow going, so everyone sort of has transparency of what's going on and what's needed, and sometimes things will be sort of pushing apart because you have different needs as a service provider, and their internal has some other needs, and to sort of get that message across and then find solutions to how can we create this, as you say, win-win situation. That's exactly what makes the XDev so great.
Awesome.
I wish I could just say what you guys said, but I do agree. I mean, that mutually beneficial relationship is so important, especially, if you want to create and sustain a relationship, internally and externally. You want everybody on both sides to be happy and feel fulfilled and excited about the project. And again, on the dev side, that's, I feel, one of my responsibilities is to keep people excited and motivated that I'm working with, and to keep that relationship alive. And it's also a responsibility, of course, to be able to succinctly explain our needs and the timeline involved in those needs, and to make sure that we're making best use of time on both sides, and that no one feels like they're idling or not having enough to do or not doing the right thing, and again, keeping that motivation and excitement there, and all the while bringing things in under budget and on time, and yeah.
No pressure.
No pressure. I think a major responsibility is being a connector piece. So you have two individual groups, two parts, and they need to connect. And that person can either become the connector piece or the bottleneck. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it's quite important that that person is bringing us the information we need and planning for the scenarios that they're expecting, because each side doesn't have any visibility to the other's issues or needs. And this is the one person who usually plans the project, finds the vendors, brings them together. And if there's information missing or planning that wasn't done in a methodical way, it creates tension between the two groups, that this person can either then also connect and solve, or make worse by pointing or blaming.
Yeah. I think that, there's a need for that person to be a certain kind of way, and then there are a lot of potential barriers to that sort of person being able to do what they need to do, right? I would love to hear maybe from the developer side a little bit, like what are some of the barriers or the challenges to be able to do that job?
Why don't you go first this time?
Thanks. I think that sometimes not having the internal team understand exactly what the relationship of the XDev manager is to all of the external vendors and everything that goes into making that happen, and that it's can be a lengthy process sometimes. It certainly doesn't happen overnight. We can't just decide one day, oh, we need 5 character assets right now, and magically have somebody start the next day. Really truly having the internal team understand the process in the pipeline of XDev engagements, and giving full support to the XDev manager to make all of that happen, and not necessarily. I feel sometimes the XDev manager can be randomized within the team, and working on several different areas within the internal team, and not able to spend as much time focusing on creating all of these relationships and engagements and everything needed to make something run smoothly. So I think that can be a challenge. Mm.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, well, so it sounds like what we've been talking about here is really about building long-term partnership, right? And it's not just about a quick win or about solving a quick problem for tomorrow. It's a lot of long-term planning and relationship building, so that you have something that's built up that will be long-term, right? And so when that is the perspective that you're taking to try to set things up, what are some of the challenges or barriers that are put in place for people in that role where it makes that difficult?
Yeah, definitely. I think I to piggyback on a lot of what you've already said, I think that there really has to be a shared understanding of what the value is in the XDev manager's role. Because I think if the values are not aligned, and this goes for more than just an XDev team, but really on any team, there's got to be alignment in terms of what everybody is focused on, and really seeing the value in those long-term partnerships, and why having those long-term partnerships, and really maintaining them, not just building them, but proactively finding ways to improve those partnerships for both parties. I think it really does take time and energy, and I would argue it really takes like full-time. It takes a full-time effort. I think if you, it's easy to get bogged down by a lot of, the administrative aspect that can come with an XDev role, but that dedicated time and appreciation for the partnership is so essential.
Yeah. This one is more for like on the service side, because I think you probably see this more than maybe on the dev side. But how often do you see turnover in this role, and how does that affect you?
Okay, you want to go first?
Sure. It really just depends. I feel that recently we've been seeing a little more turnover than historically. And also it depends on that person, how the ripple effect will pass on to us. In ideal situations, that person will not be a gatekeeper or a holder of all information that gets lost with their leaving. In an ideal situation, there's processes and documentation in place throughout the entire beginning of the project through whatever period they decide to leave, and studio and production and artists are all aware of what's happening with us, with the vendor. So this person leaving could be a very sad thing because we're friends, but it shouldn't be detrimental to the project. In the alternate scenario, when this person withholds the information and does not involve the studio heads, studio leads, production, and what they're doing, and doesn't transfer that knowledge along, then it falls on us as the vendor to inform the new person who replaces them. And for us here at Virtuous, what we've gotten into a really good habit of is maintaining many written records, so that we can almost hand over a Bible to the new person, or a guideline of what's been happening and how we can support them in being successful, because it doesn't behoove us for the replacement person to feel like they're jumping into the deep end of something they can't navigate.
Yeah, I completely agree. We haven't been affected too much by turnover. I see a lot of the same faces in the same places, but when it happens, it's always really, it's a big change, and change always takes a lot of risk, or brings risk. And to sort of build upon what you just said, like, I think onboarding happens in the XDev relationship. It both happens internally, like a new XDev needs to be onboarded in that role by the company they're working for. But it's just as much the responsibility of the service provider to help onboard that new XDev manager onto that project that you're working on, because you're sitting with so much more knowledge than they are, so they need to get that. That's why it's so important to have, as you say, all the documentation, all the processes, everything in place, so you can help them get onboarded onto the project and be successful in their role. So completely agree with you.
Yeah. I've also been running this as a table topic as well, and there's been some interesting insights that have come out of that. And one of the things that we talked about yesterday was sort of the culture of support for XDev internally, and how there isn't necessarily a standard for how an XDev manager might be incorporated into a dev team. And also like how they're reporting into the team. Some of the thoughts were that they're kind of left on your own to your own devices to kind of set things up for yourself. and we talked a bit about culture and how it would be amazing for the dev team to feel more seen and heard. Or sorry, for the XDev person to feel more seen and heard inside of the dev team. On that, like, have Caroline and Dana, have you sort of set up anything yourself where you've started to create some of that culture, or have you tried and not maybe succeeded, or what does that sort of look like for you in the past?
Do you want to take this one first?
Sure. One of the things I've recently been working on is, a huge part of onboarding, for instance, is getting the IT departments for, external and internal, working together and getting everything up and running, and that involves a lot of effort. And so I've spent some time recently fine-tuning documentation to make that happen, and having regular meetings with the internal IT to not just talk about any one particular engagement, but the process overall, and getting their take on things, and doing the same thing on the production side as well with the producers that are working with the teams. I work primarily on the art side of things, so definitely touching bases on a regular cadence with those producers to know, what their needs are, when the timeline is for those needs, and just keeping in close contact with all of those teams. And then they're seeing me often, and might think more times than not, oh yeah, XDev is probably a factor in this, I should talk to Dana. And just keeping as much communication going as possible, and being as visible as possible, and sharing processes as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of that, and the knowledge sharing piece is huge, and that's something that as a pretty new team at Riot, being a central XDev team, we've been, it's been about a little over a year, that we've been offering our services, and it really takes some time to build that kind of foundational level to then build off of and start kind of deepening the value that we can bring as a team. So I do think that some of the proving of the value has to happen over time, and it's something that people have to be patient with, including myself. I've found at times that it's really, really hard when if you have, if you're working with people who maybe don't necessarily come from an XDev background, or just haven't experienced what really good XDev management looks like, you kind of can't, you can try to communicate the value, but really until they've seen it, it's just a matter of taking the time. I also do think that there are ways to kind of expedite that through having a kind of an advisory group, where you have not just the central XDev team, but also the XDev managers who are embedded on game teams, and really making sure that you're creating a shared understanding of what good looks like, and sharing that around, and kind of almost evangelizing that as a unit, so that not everybody is doing their different things, because I think that actually really kind of deteriorates the value. If it's seen as this team does one thing, the experience is completely different on this team, that damages our reputation as XDev managers, I think. So
yeah, well, I mean that's a good word to use, reputation, because you are cultivating a reputation internally, but you are also cultivating a reputation externally with partners, right? And you are essentially the face, I guess, for both sides of what XDev looks like, right? I know we're running kind of close to the end of the session time. So my last kind of question to you guys is, if there's one thing that you hope, starting this conversation in a more open way, one thing that you want the people in this group to kind of walk away with and take into their everyday life, what would that thing be?
I think really curiosity for what the role is. Asking people who are in that role, like, what do you really enjoy the most about it? And really trying to, like, different people on an XDev team, different XDev managers may have different things that they really enjoy doing. So I think taking the time and having the curiosity to really find out what that is, and then like leveraging that. Like ideally we're all here because we really love XDev and are passionate about it. So finding where that passion is and growing it through curiosity and openness. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just not holding back. Like, bring who you are and share your experiences. Also share our thoughts and concerns. Like, for us sitting on the external side, like, understanding you and understanding the situation you're in and the needs you have just really helps us, tailor our services towards what you need. And when you succeed, we succeed. And that's what we want to do. So just, be open about it. Like, let's have these open conversations and succeed together. That's really how we get there.
It's not just a business transaction. The whole external development side of the industry is based off of passion, right? It's
exactly. We love making games.
It's people who want to make games, right? It's not just a buyer and a seller, right?
Exactly.
I would like people to understand that the XDev manager, speaking from the dev side again, that they're responsible to the internal team, of course, first and foremost, but they're also very responsible to the external team as well. And, we're that go-between, that glue that is, oftentimes, the only face that, an external team will know, and that responsibility of representation and organization is key to making both sides succeed, and that that responsibility is a role in and of itself, and that it's not something that you do on the side, or that is just part of your day. It is your day, and if you're doing it right, then everybody is succeeding. And next.
I really hope that a takeaway is that we're allies, right? And allies share resources, and we're all going to battle, per se, for the same goal. So the more we work together, the more we share what is working and what is not working, and continue to develop these relationships, the more successful we'll be. And that the vendor and client relationship should be more of a partnership, and like you said, not just a buyer and a seller, for the most successful end result.
Yep. Awesome. Dana, I really like what you said in terms of the responsibility of that role, and I, from my own experience, and I hope that there is an awareness of this across this room, is those are the people that the external studios see and work with, and we all talk as well. And if there's somebody in that role who is not taking that responsibility seriously, like that's a representation of your studio. And so we know who the awesome people are, and we know who maybe the not so awesome people are, and that I think also can drastically affect the choices you have in terms of the production of what you do and who you work with in order to get your projects done. So, no pressure, but it's kind of a big deal, right?
No pressure, but all the pressure.
Yeah. Well, you're basically an ambassador for your project, for your studio. I mean, sometimes even your own country, on the culture side of things. I think it's an important role.